All right. Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely. Always up for a good deep dive.
Okay, good. So today, it's a bit wild out there in the world, politics, tech, all this stuff just kind of crashing together.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. You sent me, some really, really interesting stuff to look at, especially those clips from the Future Shock podcast. I don't know if you've listened to that one.
I have, yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's pretty out there.
Definitely pushes the boundaries.
Yeah. So one thing that really stood out to me, was how the host just paints this picture of politics today. Like it's like this ping pong match back and forth between like progressives and these reactionaries.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty accurate description, I'd say.
He even called it a table tennis match, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, it's vivid.
Yeah. But it does, like, when you think about it, it's like, yeah, that's kind of where we are, right?
Well, and it's not just, an American thing either. It's really like a global trend, this whole polarization thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Every issue you look at, like immigration, social welfare, even, identity politics, it all just turns into this huge battle.
It's like pick a side, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And it's not just like, these abstract debates either. I mean, the podcast played this clip, right, of former President Trump where he's announcing that policy, the one recognizing only two genders.
Oh yeah, right.
And like, I don't know, just hearing the cheers from one side and then the complete outrage from the other side. It was kind of like holding your breath.
Oh yeah, it was a moment for sure.
Yeah.
Really showed how these really sensitive, hot button issues get used almost like strategically.
Oh, totally.
Leaders know exactly what they're doing. They're tapping into that, to get their base riled up to hold on to their power.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And speaking of power, one of the things the Future Shock podcast really dug into was Stargate.
Ah, yeah, Stargate.
Which is, this massive AI infrastructure project, right?
Right.
And you've got all these big tech companies involved, like Oracle, Microsoft, SoftBank, all the big players.
It's all in on it.
And it's, they announced it like right when Donald Trump got back into the presidency in 2025.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the timing, you can't help but wonder about the timing.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. It really makes you think about the whole influence that these tech companies have now.
Oh, yeah.
And whether this is, truly about helping humanity, or if it's more about like, grabbing even more power.
Yeah, and the podcast host seemed pretty skeptical, like really questioning if it was, genuine or just a power play.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good to be skeptical in these situations, to ask the tough questions like,
Mm-hmm.
who's really going to benefit from all this? Is it, everyone, or is it just a small group at the top?
Yeah, especially when we're talking about something as like, as potentially powerful as AI.
Right, exactly. AI could either solve so many problems, but it could also create, even bigger ones if it's not handled carefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, on top of all that, there's this whole other layer of like, biodigital convergence, which is just mind-blowing.
Oh yeah, that was a real head trip.
Right.
Huh.
Merging our bodies with digital systems. The podcast really went deep on that one.
It's crazy to think about how much that's already happening,
Yeah.
Like just look at biometrics, implantable devices, even the way AI is starting to personalize medicine. It's like the line between human and machine is getting blurrier all the time.
Yeah, and it's happening so fast, it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around it.
Definitely. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, and the podcast played this clip, right? And it was just this politician, casually mentioning that surveillance data collected through those implanted devices, like it's never really turned off.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, whoa, are we ever really alone anymore?
Yeah, it's a bit chilling when you think about it.
Totally.
Like someone, somewhere could be, looking at our most personal data, our biological processes even. It makes you wonder about, privacy, autonomy, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, big time. Especially in a world where data is like the new gold, right?
Exactly. Data is power.
Yeah. The podcast also kept coming back to this idea of history repeating itself. Like he drew these parallels between stuff like manifest destiny and, and the push for technological advancement today. What do you think he was getting at there?
Well, it's interesting, right? It's like even though the context is different, some of the the underlying ideas stay the same.
Yeah.
Like both manifest destiny and this drive for technological advancement.
Yeah.
They both have this belief in progress and expansion at their core.
Yeah, yeah, like we're always pushing forward.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Only now the frontier isn't geographical, it's technological. Like you could almost call it a digital manifest destiny.
A digital manifest destiny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that.
And of course, with that come a whole new set of ethical problems, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which brings us to, that really provocative idea that the podcast host brought up, welfare eugenics.
Yeah, welfare eugenics.
Like he's suggesting that, if AI-driven healthcare and genetic enhancements become available to everyone, it could actually lead to new forms of social division and control.
Yeah.
It's a pretty wild thought.
Yeah, it sounds kind of far-fetched. But then again, who knows?
Right. I mean, it's one of those what-if scenarios that are worth thinking about, even if it seems extreme.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
The name itself is definitely meant to get your attention.
It got mine.
But I think, it's forcing us to really think about the potential downsides of technologies that, at first glance seem like they would benefit everyone.
Right, right.
Like we have to ask, what are the unintended consequences? Who might get left behind? Or even, exploited in all this rush towards progress?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Exactly. And it's something we have to be really, really careful about,
Yeah.
especially now.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. It's heavy stuff.
It is.
But it's definitely stuff that we need to be talking about.
Absolutely. We can't just ignore these questions.
Yeah. And it reminds me of something else the podcast touched on, this whole idea of like a spiritual dimension to all of this. Like they ended on this really, really unexpected note.
Really?
Yeah, talking about the Book of Revelation, you know?
Wow, wow.
Yeah, and the symbolism of fire and brimstone. It's kind of a weird shift.
That is unexpected.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got, technological utopia on one hand and then ancient prophecies of apocalypse on the other.
Yeah, it's like, what?
But, I think it speaks to the anxiety that a lot of people are feeling right now, this feeling of things changing too fast.
Yeah, it's like people are looking for something, anything, to help them make sense of it all.
Right, exactly. And for some people, that means turning to spirituality, trying to find some deeper meaning, some purpose beyond, just the material world.
Yeah, like they're searching for solid ground while everything else is shifting around them.
Exactly. And it's not just about traditional religion either. There's this growing interest in things like mindfulness, meditation, ancient wisdom traditions.
Right, like people are looking for answers wherever they can find them.
Yeah. It's a longing for connection, for transcendence, and a world that can feel increasingly fragmented and kind of dehumanizing.
Yeah, I get that. It's like amidst all this technology, we're trying to remember what it even means to be human.
Exactly. And that's a question that's only going to become more important as we move forward. And, all this really brings up the question of, what it even means to be human in this crazy new world that we're building.
Right. Like, where do you even draw the line anymore?
Yeah, with technology kind of blurring all the lines,
Mm-hmm.
between physical and digital, even between our bodies and like external devices.
It's like all our old categories just don't fit anymore.
They really don't.
When you can, like, enhance your body and your mind with tech, it's like, where does the human stop and where does something else begin?
Right. It's like all those debates about transhumanism are suddenly becoming way more real.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not just some abstract philosophy anymore. It's like, this is the world we're living in.
Yeah, transhumanism, posthumanism, biodigital convergence. These are all just different ways of trying to, I guess, wrap our heads around what human evolution even means in this like super technological age.
It's a lot, and the answers aren't clear at all.
Not at all. No, we're in totally uncharted territory here, facing all these ethical, philosophical, societal questions. We're just starting to even understand what the questions are, let alone the answers.
Yeah, and the Future Shock podcast, they brought up this idea of the Internet of Bodies.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I don't know, it sounds kind of cool, but also a little bit creepy.
It's both, definitely.
What do you think about it?
I mean, think about the potential for healthcare, right?
Okay, yeah.
Like imagine all these interconnected devices inside your body, constantly monitoring everything, detecting diseases early. Like you could have personalized medicine tailored to your exact needs all the time,
It'd be like having an AI doctor with you 24/7.
pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds amazing, but then, like, flip that around.
Yeah.
All that data collection, who has access to that? Could it be used for bad stuff, like more surveillance, even control?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It
Yeah.
always comes back to control. Whoever controls the data, they control the narrative. They hold a lot of power.
It's like, you know how those social media algorithms are already messing with elections and shaping opinions?
Right, exactly. And now imagine that, but amplified 1,000 times over.
Okay, that is some serious sci-fi nightmare fuel.
There are definitely some dystopian possibilities there,
For sure.
but I think we also have the power to steer this in a better direction.
Mhm.
We can't just be passive about it.
So it's not about rejecting tech, but, like, being smarter about it.
Yeah, exactly. We need to be more aware, more critical. We need to demand transparency from the people developing these technologies, hold them accountable.
We can't just blindly accept everything without asking, hey, what's the catch?
Exactly. We need to cultivate that healthy skepticism.
Oh, for sure.
Challenge the narratives that we're being given. Really think about the ethics of all of this.
It's not about being anti-tech. It's about being, like, pro-humanity.
Exactly. We need to make sure that technology serves us, not the other way around.
Right, right. The Future Shock host, he also talked about this spatial web thing, you know?
Oh yeah, the spatial web.
Like the next level internet where everything's connected and, like, digital information is just layered on top of the real world through augmented reality.
It's like living in a video game.
It sounds incredible, but also kind of overwhelming.
Oh, for sure. It's a complete paradigm shift.
Like, imagine just walking down the street and you've got, like, instant reviews of every business, historical info about every building, personalized recommendations for, like, everything.
It's going to be wild.
Yeah, but wouldn't we just be, like, bombarded with information overload? Like, how could we even process it all?
That's a legitimate concern. As we get more and more immersed in this digital world, we're going to need some serious filters.
Right, like some way to cut through the noise and find the stuff that actually matters.
Exactly. It's about developing that digital literacy, the ability to navigate all of this information critically and effectively.
So it's not just about, like, learning new tech, it's about learning new ways of thinking.
Yeah, we need to become more adaptable, more resilient, more critical thinkers.
So much learning.
Lifelong learning is going to be essential because technology is evolving so fast, we're constantly going to need to be updating our skills.
Right, it's not just about what you know now, it's about, like, your capacity to learn and adapt as things change.
Exactly. That's going to be key.
What about all this stuff for, like, society? I
Mhm.
mean, our social structures, like communities, citizenship, even national borders, How does all this impact that?
Yeah, those are some of the big questions people are wrestling with right now.
Right.
I mean, with digital nomads, remote work, virtual communities, all of that, the traditional boundaries of geography and nationality are starting to, dissolve a little bit.
So it's like globalization on steroids.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
Some people think it's pointing towards a more globalized, interconnected world where those old distinctions become less important.
But what about the unique character of different cultures, local communities, Wouldn't we risk losing something there?
That's a valid concern, for
Mhm.
sure. It's about finding that balance,
Right.
preserving what's unique and valuable from different cultures, while also embracing, the opportunities for global connection that technology offers. It's a tricky balance.
It's like walking a tightrope between the past and the future.
Exactly. And then there's the whole economic side of things. With AI and automation advancing so quickly, it's really throwing the future of work into question.
Right. Like, are the robots going to take all our jobs?
Some people think so, yeah. There are predictions of massive job losses. But others see it as an opportunity, for new jobs to emerge, jobs that require different skills.
So how do we prepare for that? Like, how do we make sure we're not left behind?
We need to be proactive. We need to invest in education, retraining programs, focus on developing skills that are adaptable and transferable.
So, like, be ready to learn new things.
Yeah, absolutely. Be open to new opportunities, be willing to adapt, and, take control of your economic future rather than just waiting to see what happens.
It's like this whole new world is full of challenges, but also, like, tons of new possibilities.
All right, it's like we're at a crossroads.
Yeah.
And the choices we make now, they're really going to determine which path we take.
That's a pretty powerful image. It's easy to feel kind of small and helpless in the face of all this, but, like, we do have choices.
We absolutely do.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to remember that we're not just passengers on this ride.
We're not.
No, we have agency We have a voice. We can shape this future through our actions and our choices and by participating in these conversations.
Okay, that is a way more hopeful way of looking at it.
Good.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be overwhelming. It should be empowering,
Right.
knowing that we have the ability to influence what happens next.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I wanted to circle back to something else the Future Shock podcast brought up. You were saying something about agency, and it made me think about how the Future Shock podcast ended. Like they talked about how people are turning to like spirituality and stuff to make sense of all this crazy stuff happening. Like it's almost like a way to get back some control when the world is changing so fast.
It is. It's really interesting, right? Like in the middle of all this talk about AI and biodigital convergence and all these massive changes, it seems like there's this parallel thing happening where people are looking for something deeper, like meaning and purpose.
Yeah, it makes sense though, like when you hear about how technology could surpass human capabilities and stuff. It's easy to feel a little bit lost. Like your place in the world is shrinking.
Totally. And I think that's why we're seeing more interest in not just traditional religion, but also like mindfulness and meditation, all sorts of different wisdom traditions.
Mhm.
People are searching for something solid, something that goes beyond, just the material stuff, especially when the material world is changing so quickly.
Yeah, like they need an anchor in the middle of a storm.
Exactly. And I think it reminds us that even as we're, embracing all this new tech and stuff, it's important to remember our inner lives too. Our creativity, compassion, our sense of wonder, that's what makes us human. And in a world that's, increasingly dominated by algorithms and AI, those qualities are even more important.
So it's not just about, adapting to all the stuff happening outside, but also about like an internal transformation. So how do we do that? How do we stay grounded, stay human with all this stuff going on?
I think it starts by remembering that technology is just a tool, like any tool,
Hmm.
right? You can
Yeah.
use it for good or bad. It's up to us to decide how we use it, how we shape the future, and how we make sure we don't lose our humanity in the process.
So it's about like making conscious choices, not just, getting swept up in it all.
Exactly. And that means being aware of the stories we tell ourselves about progress and about the future. We need to be critical thinkers, question the narratives we're given, and create our own vision for the kind of world we want to live in.
So it's not about being afraid of the future, it's about engaging with it, shaping it with our values and our intentions.
Exactly. This new world, even with all the craziness and uncertainty, it's a huge opportunity. It's a chance to redefine what it means to be human, to decide what we want to keep, what we want to change, and what kind of legacy we want to leave behind.
Wow, that's a powerful way to put it. It's a lot to think about, but it's more hopeful than scary, I think.
Good.
Hmm.
Because ultimately, this isn't about predicting the future, it's about understanding it. It's about recognizing our own power to shape it and embracing the challenge of creating a future that reflects our best selves.
Well said. I think, as we go forward into this new world, the most important thing is to stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking the big questions.
Absolutely. The future is happening now,
Yeah.
and we all have a part to play in creating it.
Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap things up for today. It's been a great deep dive. Thanks for all your insights.
You're welcome. I always enjoy these conversations.
And thanks to all of you for listening. Stay curious out there, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.